The vast majority of Americans hate their jobs.
People are as unhappy at work as ever.
Do you like your job?
I have to say right now, I don't love my job.
Do you like your job?
No.
I hate my job. But why do I hate my job? I hate my job because standard corporate life means that there's going to be misogyny, there's going to be discrimination, there's politics to play. As a young female and a person of color, I've been the subject of discrimination in all workplaces that I've worked at. I've been underpaid, undervalued, passed over for opportunities.
Only like 18% of Americans feel engaged when they're at work.
That's crazy.
Which is like, dude, less than 20% of the country likes their job. This is like a crisis.
A 2017 Gallup poll revealed that 85% of people are unhappy in their jobs. So why is it that our jobs make us feel so depressed and unfulfilled and trapped? I have some ideas. Overworking is a hallmark of American society. From the 17th to 19th centuries, Americans worked long hours in agriculture and later in factories during the Industrial Revolution. Now, labor movements picked up steam in the late 19th to early 20th centuries, with workers organizing and demanding for better working conditions. The Great Depression and the New Deal of the 1930s introduced labor laws like the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938. After World War II, the American middle class expanded, which resulted in improved working conditions for some, but certain industries like healthcare and transportation still continue to demand long hours. Now, with the technological advancements from the late 20th century to present day, the boundaries between work and personal life have been blurred, and it created a work culture where employees are expected to be constantly available, which has really worsened this issue of overworking. Loopholes in the law allow employers to get away with overworking their employees and underpaying them. This culture of overworking that is very much a product of American culture. When you think about the concept of American exceptionalism, that we are the most powerful, best country, this is where you come to accomplish the so-called American dream. This is where you come where you can pull yourself up from your bootstraps and be successful financially, right? At least this is what the United States has conditioned us to believe through very comprehensive PR. I have to hand it to them. They're really good at it. But the sad reality is that most of us are really unhappy as a result of being overworked. Our entire society, at least here in the United States, is centered around the 9-to-5 work structure, right? Our healthcare is tied to our employer 9 times out of 10. 401ks and other retirement plans are often tied to our employers. This makes people feel so scared to do anything else, to break out of the 9-to-5 matrix, because what if an emergency happens? How are you going to support yourself if you have a medical emergency? How are you going to invest in your future? From the time that we're in school, they're teaching us how to work for someone else. They give us homework, which is teaching us to take our work home with us and overwork. At a young age, we are conditioned to believe that there is no life outside of this, that if you are not within the 9-to-5 matrix, you are destined to a lifetime of instability. Now, there was a young Gen Z woman that recently went viral for crying and just expressing how overwhelmed and overworked she was. And people subsequently dragged her, basically saying that she is being lazy and entitled and she should expect to have to work this hard. And they just turned it into a Gen Z doesn't want to work anymore conversation.
This is my first job, like my first 9-to-5 job after college, and I'm in person and I'm commuting in the city and it takes me fucking forever to get there. There's no way I'm going to be able to afford living in the city right now, so that's off the table. I get on the train at 7:30 and I don't get home till like 6:15 earliest, and then like I don't have time to do anything. I want to shower, eat my dinner, and go to sleep. I don't have time or energy to cook my dinner either. Like, I don't have energy to work out. Like, that's out the window. Like, I'm so upset. Oh my God. The 9-to-5 schedule in general is crazy. Being in the office 9-to-5, like if it was remote, you get off at 5 and you're home and everything's fine. But like, I'm not home. It takes me long to get home, and like people that drive to the office, like you don't get off at 5. And I know it could be worse. I know I could be working longer, but like I literally get off, it's pitch black. Like I don't have energy. How do you have friends? Like how do you have time to like meet like a guy? I don't know. Like how do you have time for like dating? Like I don't have time for anything, and I'm like so stressed out.
But that young woman represents the vast majority of Americans. The problem is that older generations think that because they suffered through having really miserable jobs, that we too have to suffer through it. Shouldn't we be aiming towards progress? I think about the fact of like, if our civil rights leaders and anybody who's ever made any kind of change, especially for me as a Black woman, like if the previous generation decided that they suffered through exploitation and discrimination, and that because they suffered that the subsequent generations also had to suffer, we would literally not even have a society to inhabit. We're supposed to get better. We saw the same discourse with the student loans conversation, right? When we have a conversation about how people's student loans should be forgiven, the first contrarian argument is often,
well, I paid all my student loans. Why should they get to have theirs forgiven?
Again, just because you suffer does not mean that the people who come after you have to suffer the same. Older generations were conditioned to believe that this was the only way. And at that time in society, it was the only way. So they feel like because it was the only way for them, that should be the only way for everyone else. When you express to older family members that you want to work for yourself, they often say like,
I suffered through this. Like, why shouldn't you?
You're too young to complain. At least previous generations could say that they worked hard and had something to show for it. At least those people were able to invest in buying homes and make other investments into their future. Young people of today have inherited the worst economy. The cost of living has skyrocketed and it's preventing young people from being able to enjoy the fruits of their labor.
This is a graph of inflation versus home prices from 1970 to 2023. This purple line is the CPI, or the Consumer Price Index. This is the cost of goods, and you can kind of see that over time it kind of rises kind of steadily. The blue line, however, is the cost of homes. So basically $100,000 back in 1990, which is probably right around like right here, that would buy you $377,000 worth of a home today. By comparison, $100,000 worth of goods, so goods that go into the normal price index basket that we usually like to calculate, that would cost you roughly $136,000 today. There's a lot of other costs that are going up as well, such as transportation, education, as well as healthcare, as I'm sure you are aware of. Now, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, you'd have to earn about $129,000 today to have the same amount of purchasing power as $100,000 just a decade ago.
Why is the work structure that's constantly being sold to us as the key to stability making us feel like anything but stable? A lot of 9-to-5 jobs don't make people feel particularly motivated or inspired or happy to go to work every day. They're led by one emotion: fear. Fear of having the rug pulled from underneath you, fear of not being able to meet your goals for your performance appraisal, fear of not doing enough, saying enough, or being enough, fear of not being able to pay your rent, pay your bills, pay for food. A 2022 study by the National Low Income Housing Coalition revealed that nearly half of Americans don't earn enough to afford a 1-bedroom rental. And not just in major cities either, because although the problem is more acute in major cities, it's also pervasive nationwide. Researchers also found that there's not a single county in the United States where an individual working full-time at a minimum wage job can afford a 2-bedroom rental. The immediate response for some people might be like, okay, so go to college. You should be able to earn a job if you go to college to make more than minimum wage, right? But when we go to college, those student loans, they get us. Unless you have some generational wealth to fall back on that you don't have to take out student loans, or you're lucky enough to get a scholarship, which scholarships are limited. Everyone can't get a scholarship no matter how great your grades are. You're inevitably going to have to take out student loans. And also, going to college does not guarantee financial stability either, as many of you, I'm sure, can attest to. Most people are living paycheck to paycheck with the boot of fear on their necks, and it strips us from our ability to be authentic and to be ourselves. And we end up faking it in the workplace. We end up having to put on a performance in order to climb up the corporate ladder.
Having a job in the corporate world is 100% just acting. Literally acting. Like, I get up in the morning, I put my, costume on, because I'm not wearing those kinds of clothes outside of this place. And then I go in there and start using words like kind regards and ROIs. That ain't me. I am fully acting. Do you really think I use words like ROI on my day-to-day life? No! We're we're all out here acting. And really, if you think about it, the people who act the best, that's who is successful. The best actors. It's a theater performance. And 90% of us were not theater kids growing up. No. So not even that, it's bad acting. It's not even acting, it's bad acting.
Business speak is the language we use on the job and only on the job to describe and define things. For instance, at home, I might say to my son, "It's time to go. Are you ready?" While at work, I'm more likely to say to a colleague, "Is it scalable? You can give me a baseline ETA on departure? We need to leave ASAP."
We talk in ways that no one talks in real life. We make up all of this corporate jargon that is so inaccessible. Putting yourself first is key. As Cookie Lion once told us, I gotta put me first. But in this society, it's always conditioning us to put the employer first. You have to work at a job for X amount of years, no matter how miserable it makes you, because you have to be mindful of how it looks in your resume. Job interviews are for the company to assess you and not for you to assess the company. You have to beg your employer for time off and so on and so forth. And for those of us who want to pursue entrepreneurship, we're trapped within the 9-to-5 matrix because it's distracting us from being able to have the energy to put our life force into our dreams. Entrepreneurship is not the panacea. I don't want to paint it as being perfect and without flaws, because within entrepreneurship, you also get the rise and grind culture, the we all have the same 24 hours in a day culture. That's not healthy either. You are supposed to participate in this matrix until you're 65, if you're lucky enough to retire at 65, until you're 65, when most of your good years are behind you. Most of your life has already passed you by at this point. The status that we ascribe to certain jobs over others is another reason that people are not happy in their jobs. If you say that you have like a management position, for example, at some major corporation, versus if you say that you're a teacher or a farmer, an organizer, 9 times out of 10, people are going to be more likely to applaud you for that corporation job. But most people that work in these corporate jobs are very unhappy, even though society tells you that that's what you're supposed to strive for. A lot of people who are working in these roles are very unhappy. These corporations know that a lot of people are clamoring to work there, so they treat you as a dime a dozen because you're so easily replaceable. When Elon Musk took over Twitter, he fired more than half of the employees without so much of a second thought. They literally learned that they were being let go when they logged into their work portals and they couldn't get in. I'm sure those people were so hardworking and they put a lot of time and energy and hours into working there, only to find out in such a cold and callous way that they no longer had a job there. Jeff Bezos, that man literally is union busting like it's going out of style. Facebook is known for having a very toxic work culture, but these are the companies that are heralded. These are the companies that make people's ears perk up when you tell them that you work there. LinkedIn culture is a really big contributor to this. You want to be able to have a really good sounding position, not only on your resume, but for your networks to spectate over and to applaud you for. I have been guilty of that. What ends up happening is people end up chasing job titles and not chasing happiness. And if you're like me and you're like a first generation American with immigrant parents, you know that there's so much pressure to also be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, something prestigious that they can brag about to your aunties and uncles, right? People hate their jobs because we are conditioned as a society to chase after jobs that sound good to other people rather than jobs that sound good to ourselves, rather than jobs that make us happy and feel fulfilled. And those that are in jobs that are deemed to be not respectable, like those who work in the food service industry or in the gig economy, they are also looked down upon. They're constantly dehumanized, especially people of color. The demon mayor of New York, Eric Adams, called people who were cooks and dishwashers, people who work in the food service industry, he referred to them as, quote, low-skilled workers, that they don't have the intellect to work in a corner office. People who work in the service industry are literally the most hardworking people. Like, just imagine the level of skill that you have to be able to work in a mercurial work environment where you don't know if there's a Karen that's going to walk in, give you a hard time today, or a Ken that's going to walk walk in, give you a hard time tomorrow. You don't know. And so imagine the level of patience, the level of skill it takes to do that labor. Imagine how resourceful and how intelligent you have to be to do that. And yet, we have the mayor of New York City referring to those people as low-skilled workers. Removing these social stratifications that tell people that, this job means that you're more valuable and this job means that you're less valuable. That is the key to making people feel more happy at work. What would you be doing if you were not so consumed by the status that your job ascribes to you? These are the questions we need to be asking ourselves. How can we do work that betters our communities? How can we create work environments that are accessible and inclusive? I mean, that is a key to people being happier at work. Jobs that are person-centered, that are not profit-centered. Even those who have higher paying jobs, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily happier either, because a lot of higher paying jobs come with a higher level of stress. And a higher level of stress then causes people to spend more money because they're trying to relieve that stress. They're buying products that they don't need. They're over-medicated because they can't cope with the stressors that their job creates. I would venture to say that most of our addictions are born out of our inability to cope with our jobs. We really need a work environment where we're not encouraged to step on other people's toes, where we're not subjected to these hierarchies, to the bureaucracy of it all, to these cruel work structures that prevent us from being our best selves, that erode away on our ability to be free. Freedom and fear, they can't coexist. Just because older generations suffered in silence does not mean that we have to. I'm seeing more and more young people, especially Gen Z, reclaim their independence. They're setting boundaries. They're imagining their lives outside of labor.
And we'll just pick up on that initiative tomorrow. And before we go...
Once we can extricate ourselves from this fear-based mindset, only then will we find freedom. I definitely, though, want to hear from you all in the comments down below. What have you found have been your biggest obstacles in navigating your job? How do you find your freedom? I'd love to hear from you all. Definitely let me know what you're thinking. And if you like this video, definitely give it a thumbs up. And if you really liked it and you want more content like this, definitely hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you all next time.